Well, this is a watercolor of a Chipping Sparrow. It's only 7 by 10 inches. It's all done in transparent watercolor, so if you see white, it's white of the paper. This was a fun one to work on because we had a lot of crazy, vibrant pinks and magentas and greens to play with. Lots of fun. I started with a wet-on-wet wash with green, hair dried that, and then went a wet-on-wet wash with magenta. And I spattered a little water in, put in a little bit of purple spatter, and then charged in some more magentas so I could get some nice back runs and build some personality to it. Put in another couple of splashy layers of glazes, really, of phthalo greens and some yellows. Brought in some more magentas, some purples. You can see some cobalt blue mixing in with the pinks on the right in the palette. And at this point, I was using a number 2 round brush after the initial things were on. That was using a Winsor & Newton Scepter Gold. Those are pretty good cheap brushes for doing not super detailed work, but a little bit of fine lines. You can see that I started bringing in a lot of the building depth to mimic the little buds of the redbud in the background and some of the foliage. Tried to bring in a little bit of the pinks up top, and then I removed the frisket. With the frisket removed, I transferred the lines of the original drawing onto the paper so I could put in light local washes. If I kept these pencil lines at the beginning, the frisket would have peeled them off. So I put in all the lightest local colors here and just try to cover as much of the paper as quickly as possible. If you have white on your page, you start balancing all your colors based on the white. If you have the actual background put in and you start covering all that white up, you're going to balance your colors and have things working together from early on. That's always better. Started putting in some more detail, second glazes of color. And again, I'm using that same number 2 round brush to build in some of those details. Put on my glove, my painting glove. Here I'm using a Winsor & Newton Series 7 sable brush. Those are nice and pointy and hold a lot of pigment. You can cover a lot of territory. Very sharp despite being a little bit larger brush. I usually use a glove with these. Oh, you can see the original photo that I used from these. I got that photo in the backyard. That was with a 400mm lens. It was one of the main reference for this painting. But I usually use a glove. That keeps keeps me from smudging paint and getting fingerprints and all sorts of mess on the painting. When you're working with something that's only 7 by 10 inches, you want to keep it really crisp and clear, because if you have a little smudge, it's going to ruin a lot of the little details you have there. With a bigger canvas, a fingerprint might disappear, but with a little one, everything's got to be just right. So I usually wear a glove, or sometimes we'll cover a portion of the painting with some tracing paper or something to keep it nice. So here I'm just glazing in more colors. As I go, I work more opaquely, mixing the pigment a little darker each time, and working light to dark. Here I'm using that other Scepter Gold brush. That's a pretty decent cheap brush. And you can see the reference. It was a good shot. I pushed the background more in a pink direction because I thought it would play well with the other pinks of the Redbud and make for a more vibrant painting, perhaps, and a little bit out of the ordinary instead of the usual kind of green, low depth of field background you see in photographs. So trying to make something different than just the photo that I had taken in the backyard. So you can see that in this painting, I spent a lot of time on the flowers and the branches, and the bird really went by very quickly. So lots of little details. I'm switching now. These are little. I think that was a 5/0 brush, a Winsor & Newton Regency. They're cheap brushes. They do a pretty decent job for tiny little details, and there are a lot of tiny little details on this. Just getting each one of those little blossoms to look right. Took some time. And most of these I was using the magenta. You can see I'm pulling in some purples from the palette. There's also some cobalt blue for some of the little leaves hidden in with the flowers. I was using some oranges that I made with some cadmium red and some of the cadmium yellows mixed with some of the greens that I used in the background. But most of the flowers were done with the magenta. Some of the stems of the flowers were done with alizarin crimson, and both of those had a little bit of the cobalt blue or the purples brought in for the darker spots. You can see there's a lot of feverish going over the same thing a bazillion times until it looks right, and trying to keep all those nice little things crisp where you want them crisp and keep the blurry stuff in the background. Kind of work some of the things in between so you build from that loose background into the tight detailed flowers. Some of those middle areas of detail kind of lead your eye in and out of those, which is kind of a fun way to work. I dropped in a couple of shadows on the branch behind the flowers, and that really started to pop the branch back behind the little bunch of the flowers. We're getting close to done. Now I'm just adding some of the fine details on the bird. Getting some of those sandy kind of colors in on the back. Back to the flowers, back to the wing. Kind of hopping around. Late in the painting, I find you'll work on a little piece here, a little piece there, and you work on problems that haven't been solved yet, and then eventually you run out of things to work on. Here I was adding a little bit of shadow to the bird's belly and the breast, and then back to the wings. Adding some final details to the face. Finishing up some of those final flowers and leaves. Picking out those little tiny details to really crisp up parts of it. Put my name on and said it was done. So there it is, Chipping Sparrow, 7 by 10 inches. It's a little one, but a lot of detail in a small amount of space. Thanks for watching. Visit the website if you like.